Hey, everybody. Welcome to Romero Pictures Indie Brigade. Again, this is the Indie Brigade. It is not a live episode of the Indie Brigade. This is, well, I guess this is the introduction video for the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade Drone Cav, which is something I'm very excited about. We also just brought you the Wagner Wiles, and we're going to do a little crossover action here tonight, which I think is going to be really cool and a lot of fun for people to watch. Let me tell you a little bit about the Drone Cav. We're very, very lucky to have a gentleman named Terry Jarrell, who has come on board to be the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade resident drone expert. I'm going to let him talk all about himself and his plans for the Drone Cav. But what I think is really cool about this is that this is an opportunity for filmmakers to learn from a real honest God drone expert on how to sort of, bring drones into your no budget films and into your low budget films as a way to up your production value and really kind of take this indie stuff to the next level and bring a whole new level of quality to the work that people are putting out. So in the studio, I guess in everybody's studios or our homes, if you want to call it that, we'll just call it that. We've got Lance and Samantha Wagner from the Wagner Wiles, and we've got Mr. Terry Jarrell, the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade Drone Cav expert and owner of Black Dog Drones. I am going to bow out here, and I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves, introduce each other, and talk for as long as they want to talk about everything we have going on with Mr. Terry Jarrell here. So enjoy.
Well, sounds
Hi, Terry.
Hey,
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Wide awake.
Wide awake, that's for sure.
You just got home from work.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be here, and I'm really stoked about the Drone Cav. So I think we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up.
I think so.
I think the thing you're going to help out. Sam knows because she buys me all the videos, but I've seen a lot of independent movies with the drones, and I think that like George was saying, the production value. Those shots are amazing to me. I've blown away by those shots, and they're really cool the way they're performed. Yeah, I mean thank you, Joe. Perfect. That's amazing.
Well, drones have the one of the big things about it. It's still such a new thing. It's like soft clay in everybody's hands right now, and a lot of people are familiar with common uses like shooting real estate photography and cell tower inspections and agriculture. There's all these things. I've been into droning for pretty much since the first, crappy styrofoam cheap ones came out. Wow. All the way through. And just a little bit of background about myself. I've been in technology about 20 years and followed this very closely as it developed into a real thing. And I've been a lifelong indie film fan, and it was just crazy seeing these two things come closer and closer, and how these could be applied to film. And so I work in a few capacities. I'm also a writer on drone technology, and there are some other things that we're going to be talking about quite a bit in the Drone Cav too. Not getting preachy, but things you just really need to know about, the legalities and the regulations and the proper ways to fly, because you want to stay out of trouble too. And you also want to be a better drone pilot as well as a photographer, because you are wearing two hats when you're in the air. So it's sort of that, patting your head and rubbing a circle on your belly type thing going on in a lot of cases. But yeah, drones can be used as such a versatile tool. And one thing I always talk about is like on social media, Facebook, whatever, YouTube, you'll see all these videos that guys are shooting. And again, we won't get into the rights and wrongs here, but they tend to do these really beautiful panoramic shots of beaches or mountaintops and all this beautiful big scenic stuff, which is cool. But after you see a couple hundred of those, it kind of starts like, okay, is this all these are good for, or going 300 feet in the air? No, you can use drones. I've been on shoots where I've never left 10 feet, maybe 12 feet altitude. You can use them for great dolly shots, tracking shots, drones that have the capability to do dynamic tracking, which is where you lock onto a subject and let it follow them or whatever. You can do some really amazing things, crane shots, tripod shots, all these things. so efficiently and so easily, and it's quick and easy to change your shot or set it up a different way, or it's like, hey, I want to get it from this angle, that angle, and that angle. Hey, it's just a matter of pulling the drone down and figuring out where you want it to be. You don't have all the hardware to mess with and all that. So
Cool.
So anyway, I hope I didn't tell you how to build a watch when you asked me what time it was.
Oh, that's all right.
I had to do that.
So what got you into drones to start with? I call it droning. What got you into droning?
Droning. That's a good term for it. Being kind of a tech person anyway, I was always interested when I first started hearing about this drone thing coming out, and of course, being a big Terminator fan too, it was like, oh, this is great, Skynet. Well, we've got Skynet, so I guess I'm not a Skynet fan, but anyway, the first drones that came out, one of the first popular models was a Parrot AR, and it was this big hunk of styrofoam. Basically, it was clumsy, it was slow, it was expensive. It didn't really do anything. It had a really crappy camera on it. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is magic. This is cool stuff. A little bit further, and I ended up getting my first real drone. I jumped in, spent a little bit of money, got a pretty decent model. And that's, again, something that I talk about in the Drone Cav. Where should you start? Because there's a lot of cheap models out there. You're just going to bang your head against the wall. So I got a decent model, got started with that. And a friend of mine is a pilot here, pretty prominent pilot here in Central Florida, and found out he was also into drones. And he kept kind of dropping these lines to me like, hey, when are you going to quit doing what you're doing and jump over into drones? This is going to blow up. I see it. It's coming. And like, it's never going to, you can't make money flying drones. I mean, it's like making money eating pizza. I mean, yeah, I'd do that in a minute.
Right.
And so as time went on, and I would talk to him, he's like, yeah, this is what's going on. And I sort of had that eureka moment, like, yeah, this is really coming alive. So I just started dedicating time to learning how to fly better and things like that. And about that time, the FAA came along and said, okay, this is how serious it is. We're going to require certification for this. So it's a little tricky to get, honestly, but there's reasons for that. And so I jumped through that hoop, got my remote pilot certificate. It's not a license, it's a certificate. There's a little kind of semantics, but there is a difference there. And so I've just kind of continued digging deeper into it ever since. And the technology over the past 2 years especially has doubled easily in capability as far as camera quality, flight time. That's another biggie. How long can your drone stay in the air, the battery, and just overall stability of the drone itself. Are you going to have a hard time flying this thing? Or somebody said earlier, they fly themselves. So there's all these things you kind of have to balance and figure out when you get a drone, or do you even want to get into droning yourself as a filmmaker, or just hire a professional to come in and do it? So there's a lot of different ways to that, to look at that.
Gotcha.
So what kind of different licenses, certificates can you get, or is it all one similar same?
Right now, there's just one. And
okay.
there are two types of flying to be aware of. There is recreational and professional. And as a recreational pilot, you can go buy a drone, and you're not limited. You can buy any drone you want. But the stipulation is you have to abide by a certain set of rules, which are common to both sides. Things like you don't fly above 400 feet above ground level. You don't fly at night. Some basics, fundamentals like that you agree to adhere to. And the big thing is you only are flying for your personal enjoyment or leisure, relaxation. You're not flying for, it's where it kind of gets a little sticky with some people, but it's a pretty clear delineation. Like if you say, hey, I'm just flying for my kid's soccer team, I'm going to take pictures to put in their newsletter, and I'm not charging anything, so it's not professional. It's still professional at that point, because you're doing it for something outside that is going to have potentially a commercial ramification, because that newsletter may have ads in it that they sold to the bakery down the street.
Okay.
That version, that category. The FAA has been pretty good so far as their penalty system. we just passed the 3-year point requiring a certification. That was in August 2016 when it was initiated. And you do have to recertify every 2 years. So that it is a continuing certification thing. So they've been pretty good about giving out warnings unless you've done something really severe. But my feeling is they're kind of getting to the end of that, hey, slap on the wrist thing. We're going to start handing out penalties. And they are hefty penalties. Now, another thing to be aware of, and this is a Drone Cav point I've got in a story, there is what to look for if you do hire someone to do drone photography for you. I've had situations, I don't know if I mentioned, but I work with the FAA as a drone pro on the FAA safety team. I'm a volunteer for that. So I do hear of and get privy to some kind of crazy situations sometimes. But I've heard of situations where I'll say person X, Y, Z. It could be a filmmaker, could be someone just wanting pictures for some reason commercially. They don't have their certificate. Their Part 107 is the professional certificate name. But their friend's kid down the block has a drone. So maybe if I just pay him $20 to come out, nobody will know the difference. Well, okay, that's all fine and good. So if you get caught, the drone operator gets a penalty. The person that hired him gets that penalty times 2 for knowingly knowingly circumventing the law.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and they've been handing out a few of those, as I understand.
So ignorance doesn't count as part of the law. You have to do it. Okay.
Yeah, and it's the big thing is safety, and we're trying to bring professionalism into it, and sort of hand in hand with responsibility, because these things can really hurt people, and damage property. Of course, injuries. There was a story in the news a couple months ago. A drone got away from somebody out, I think in Salt Lake City, and he lost control of it. It just flew away, and basically the battery spun down. Typically, if the battery gets to a certain point, lots of drones will just go into an auto land. They'll just set down wherever they are. They could care less where they're at. Well, this happened to come down on a sidewalk. Girl had on her earbuds walking down the street, and it came down. And well, the props on this one were about 11 inches, spinning about 600 RPMs. So you know what your Ninja does to a smoothie? Yeah, it was pretty ugly.
Oh, wow.
That's what they're trying to avoid. So there's a lot of emphasis on flight safety and what to do in an emergency. I've had crazy situations come up. Here, I live in Central Florida, and I try to fly at least every other day or so, even if it's just going out. I live in a Class G airspace, which is open, so I can fly here at my house. So I'll go out back. We have a big field out back, and just put in a half hour, just practice this or that. We have hawks around here. I mean, these crazy hawks, and they will chase my drone. And I just landed. I have to get away from them because they'll start to circle it, and they'll get closer and closer. I just get it on the ground as quick as I can, because they don't know. They're going to get in there and get hurt, and then bust up my drone.
Cool footage, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, it's a safety first situation, the way I look at it. And then we can look at sort of the photography side of it, because once you get to be a really good pilot, you can use some of the automated things, and there's ways to use those without just going for, hey, this trick effect. I mean, this is cool. I can do this like spiraling orbit thing. It's like, yeah, that would be cool, but what if you only needed like half of that shot? There's other ways to do that and to focus on that. So piloting and flying skills are really, really cool and really important.
Hey, Terry, I was going to ask, I know Sam's had some questions written down, but is there a database? Like, I don't know if like in your position, can you look and see who is a qualified drone operator?
Yes, you can. In fact, I will be putting that link on the Drone Cav. I'm going to be doing not only just written blog posts and stories and like that. I'm also going to be including some videos, like tips and tricks videos,
Awesome.
like short little. I love bite-sized information, because I think that's something. Instead of I've taught a lot of classes over the years, And I find you get too much information, especially on something that's very new. You just glaze over after not long, 30 minutes or whatever. I like to do little short things like 2 or 3 minutes. Hey, here's how you go do this. So immediately you can, close out the YouTube window and run outside and mess with it.
That's
so
awesome.
these little bite-sized things. So I'm going to be adding some videos and things like that to go along with that. But to answer your question, one of the resources I'll be linking to is the FAA website, where you can go and verify that somebody does have their Part 107 certificate.
That's awesome.
The other thing to ask if you are hiring an operator or if you're operating yourself is about insurance, to make sure they're insured. And there's if, say, a filmmaker does want to pursue the 107, get their certification, but they're not going to fly a lot, maybe just occasionally, 2 or 3 times a year even, and they don't need to pay for a full year big giant insurance policy. There are companies that one's called Verifly, another one I think is called Skywatch, that offer insurance per flight. So you show up on your scene, and it pulls your GPS location, knows where you're at, so it knows if you're in a clear airspace and all that. And it won't get into all the mechanics of your authorization, but say everything's cool for you to fly right there, and then you just punch in like, hey, I need insurance for 2 hours for $1 million, whatever the requirements are, and you just pay by the flight, and it's really cheap. I mean, it might be like $20 for a couple hours.
That's right.
So so just like any contractor would need insurance like that. It's a good thing to ask if you are hiring or if you're going to fly yourself.
Awesome.
Lance works railroad, and there was, I guess, a couple years ago, there was like police and everything down there, and he works on the ship channel in Houston, which sometimes we're high alert, sometimes we're low alert, but you still have to have certain credentials to get down there.
Mm-hmm.
This police chase was because these guys were filming either a video or a movie or something on the ship channel with a drone
And
that wasn't authorized.
And they lost it.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so there were cops swarming everywhere. It was like.
And they had a gun in their Escalade.
Oh, yeah. It was something else.
That was not a good day for those guys.
No, not. Well, that brings up a good point about credibility. There are, and you're probably familiar with this, there's a lot of mistrust with drone operators. There is that, hey, you're flying over my backyard looking, through my window, or you're looking at my people laying by the pool, or you're doing the spying stuff. And the majority of cases, they're not, but it's that perception out there. So you need to be aware of that too. And for example, whenever I'm flying on site, I wear something to identify myself, at least a company logoed shirt and all. And it's kind of a big hoop-de-doo. I've got like the landing pad, and I put out orange cones and all. There's no mistaking something's going on here. And my drone's bright orange, and the landing pad is blue or orange depending on the light. So it really says, hey, I'm a professional doing this. I even have like the safety vest. If it's a more public thing, there's going to be a lot of people around, maybe traffic nearby. I'll put all that stuff on, and it's like, yeah, it might look kind of silly, but hey, it's establishing some credibility there that there is some activity going on.
You're legit, yeah. So if there was a situation where somebody, say, driving over your pool or spying in your back window, is there a place to report that kind of thing? Or
typically, if you feel someone is spying on you like that, you just contact the police as usual, the normal authorities, because it's not to say that people don't try to do it. I'm sure there are plenty out there. Now, this I haven't really had time to read through this document yet. It just came out today. That is going to make this whole subject a little more interesting. The FAA has announced today a proposal for a rules amendment that will require remote identification for all drones, meaning drones manufactured after a certain date. If this is passed, and it's still got some channels to go through, meaning that when drones manufactured after a certain point, once they're in the air, they are going to broadcast their their information, where they're at, their stats, their height, their speed, their registration number, which ties right back into the owner. So they'll know who's flying it, all the details about the drone, if there's an authorization that's been applied to the mission, the flight mission. So all that information is going to be available to the police or whatever. So if you did have a drone hovering over your backyard for a little too long and you called the police, they would be able to say, okay, that's, John Doe and it's a Phantom 4 and blah, blah, blah. They'd have all that information and they could contact and say, hey, what are you doing? Or just show up. But at least they would have some information there. Okay. And it's one of those kind of sticky things, because then people start saying, hey, you're trying to big brother me. But it's like, hey, we're just trying to keep people safe too.
Right. Yeah. We still have a right to privacy.
Right. And that's where the law kind of lands on it. It's like, who owns what airspace? Because people say, well, it's my backyard, you're in my airspace. Well, not really, because the airspace is separate from the ground. And it's like you're not going to fly over my house. Well, you've got commercial airliners flying over your house. I mean, where does that end? It really doesn't. It's the national airspace. Right. So, but there is an expectation of reasonable privacy respect. So that's where it needs to be, I guess, monitored.
Is 400 feet, you said was the max, correct?
Yes.
Is that because they could get into the small aircrafts?
Yeah, exactly. What it is UAS, or unmanned aircraft, drones can fly up to 400 feet above ground level. There's a little exception to that if you're flying around, say, a building, say like the 100-story skyscraper. Of course, that's going to be more than 400 feet. Right. You can fly 400 feet above a structure like that. Okay. So because a manned aircraft cannot fly closer than that. The floor for manned aircraft is 500 feet, and that 400 foot gives 100-foot separation between manned aircraft flight and air flight. Now, and we won't get into all the airspaces and all that, because you do have different airspaces depending on your proximity to airports and other areas like that you do have to be aware of in flight, that require special authorization before you can fly in those areas. And those can vary. Those can be from 0 to 400 feet, just depending on the proximity to the protected airspace or managed airspace.
Gotcha.
So am I bombarding you with too much stuff?
No, absolutely. Awesome. No, this is all new information to a lot of us. And that was one of the questions I was going to ask, is if you were going to do an annual, like a licensed real estate, we pay annually or biannually actually for our licenses. About what does a drone license cost? Well, the drone, the only fee is the certificate, and it's $150 to take the exam. Mm-hmm. And that's the same for the recurrency. So every 24 months you take the recurrency test. It's $150. It's a multiple choice test. The initial test is 60 questions. Now, again, this is all in flux. It may change. So we don't know if it's going to be this way in a year or whatever, but up to this point, it stayed pretty close to the same. The initial test is 60 questions, multiple choice. You need 70% to pass. And the recurrency is 40 questions, same 70% to pass. And it's a mix of things you have to know. And this is where people that I have helped prep to take the tests or even talk to, and they said, whoa, this is just not for me. This is way crazy. Why do I need to know this? It does get really involved. You have a lot to know, again, about airspace. You have to know a ton about weather. Weather is a really important thing. For example, the wind speed on the ground might be 2 or 3 miles an hour. You get up 100 feet, it could be 15 or 20 miles an hour. So it's really going to affect whether you have control or even your shot. You have to know things like medical conditions, aeromedical, how to know if you're about to maybe have heat stroke or whatever. Again, here in Florida, you'd be out in the sun 3 or 4 hours flying, and before you know it, you're not paying attention, you're getting dehydrated, things like that. And then you have airport regulations and things like that, knowing how to watch for air traffic, even if you're not really close to an airport, how to use the radio, how to listen for manned air traffic in your area. If you hear a plane
on approach or whatever, that you can kind of be a little proactive and listening and making sure you're not getting in anybody's way. So I think the remote ID may help go in that direction as far as automatically locating where the drones are in proximity to manned aircraft. And it is a federal test, so the fees are the same in any state. Now, there are some states, though, that are coming up with their own certification. I know North Carolina has their own certificate that you get if you already have your Part 107 certificate and you're going to fly in North Carolina. I can't think of any other states that may have this. So there could be some I'm just not aware of. But North Carolina has a little online exam you take, and you can get a certificate from them to fly there. I don't think it lasts very long. And I took it about a year ago. I jumped on there when there was the hurricane went through and there was some damage. And I was asked if I would be available in case I needed to come up and do some inspection, which I turned out didn't have to. But I jumped online and took the quick little exam there. And it's not nearly as involved or tough. Now, the federal test, the 107, you do have to take at an FAA testing facility, but they're all over the place. They're easy to find. You can't take it online on your own computer. It's a proctored test. So you have somebody breathing down your neck.
Right.
Wow.
So if, say, in the film industry and somebody's on a low budget, they want to start doing the drone, is this like something they might be able to do, maybe in a higher, lower $500 range?
They could. Actually, this guy here would be a perfect drone for a budget filmmaker. I'm getting that lined up. This is a Mavic Mini. These just came out maybe a couple months ago, maybe not quite 2 months ago. This is made by a company called DJI. They're the biggest in the commercial drone industry, probably in general. And they make a ton of models. This little guy, you can get a pretty nice kit for $500. It's got 3 batteries. It's got a big charger. It's got some spare parts, nice little case. But this will shoot surprisingly good stuff. For stills, it doesn't shoot raw. It only shoots JPEG, but they're really good. And it has such a dynamic range. You can really work with those pretty well in post. Video, it shoots 2.7K at 30 frames per second. So it's not up there with 4K, but it is really good stuff. Of course, it doesn't shoot in RAW. But for a budget, you could get by with this. I've been flying this for just a few weeks and kind of using it as just sort of a practice drone, just something to go out and mess around with flying maneuvers and things like that. And it surprises me every time I take it out, the quality that I'm getting out of it. It folds up. It's really tiny. The legs fold up.
Hang on, time. Can y'all hear us?
So,
Sorry. I've gone nuts all of a sudden.
but one thing about this guy too, if you are a new operator or just getting your first drone, DJI makes a big deal about this being 249 grams. You have to register any drone that weighs 250 grams or more. So they're kind of they're wink, wink, nod, nod, implying that you kind of don't have to follow the rules, or that at least that's the perception going on out there. And that's not true. You still have to follow all the same rules and regulations flying this, even though it's small. It just saves you from spending $5 for registration. So don't think you can just buy a small drone and I can do whatever I want. You really do have to follow the same rules. But this dude would be an excellent tool for somebody on a really, really low budget. It has a 30-minute flight time. You get 3 batteries in the kit, and that's going to keep you in the air a good long time.
That's a cool one.
Yeah, like I said a bit earlier, there's a lot of cheap drones you'll find online for $100, $150. They're just going to be a bag of hurt. They're not going to have the flight stability. Like this one has GPS and GLONASS in it. So when it goes up in the air, the drone sits like this. And even if it picks up a little wind, it's got a 3-axis motorized gimbal. The image is going to be rock stable, rock solid. So So it's a really good solution. And to see if droning is going to be what you want to do to start adding to your production, then you can always work up from there. But and you know, hopefully you won't punch it into a tree or out of a building or anything. But if you do, $500 is a lot easier to.
A drone a couple years ago, and on Christmas night,
the day he got it,
his cousin got it stuck in a tree, and he never got to even play with it. So,
oh man.
So poor kid is sitting in the box now because all the impellers are messed up on it and everything. It wasn't a great, big, expensive one, but he never got to play with it. But
yeah.
But how do you see in the movie industry? How do you see it helping with shots? I guess, like, I know on some movies you have the trains and the trails.
Mm-hmm.
See it taking place of all of that stuff?
I see it replacing some of that in some ways. I think there's a place for both in production. I kind of, in my mind, I see sort of this line of distinction. Like, you've got the big Hollywood productions, and they're flying the really big drones. They're typically like a DJI Matrice. They're these big, giant, heavy drones. They're carrying, you know, it's a $10,000, $15,000 drone carrying a $30,000, $40,000 camera. So that's really doing some special magic. But here on Earth, where we've got, you know, a budget for $500, up to maybe a couple thousand for a drone, is it really? Are you really kind of scraping the bottom? And you're not. You can really get super quality out of these drones. But as far as like replacing, say, a dolly track or something, in a lot of cases it can. And again, if you want to set up a shot, there was a picture that I sent over earlier that has a pickup truck going down kind of a dirt road, a clay road, and a girl standing in the background. Right. That's from a music video. That one. I shot that about a month ago. It's for a music video for a young lady singer here, Liza Marie. And that shot I did a couple different ways. That was what would look like the crane shot. I locked the image onto the truck, and as the truck drove away from her, I rose the drone up to about 60 feet. And what it did is it automatically kept the truck in focus and kind of stayed on the truck, but you could see the truck move away, yet we stayed in one position. So it was just like a crane straight up.
Oh, wow.
So I did the shot a different way. Talking to the director, I said, hey, let's get a few different views of this thing. I mean, we can do this, but let's kind of give it a little motion, because the scene it's a breakup scene. He's leaving her and they've split up, blah, blah, blah. So that shot was good, but I said, let's stay on the truck. I'm going to lock the drone onto the truck, and it's going to follow him away as she falls out of the frame at the bottom. And then the viewer, are going to go along with him toward the future, or toward, you know, his new life or whatever. So we did the shot that way, and that's what it actually looks like they're going to end up using in the video. So it's kind of cool that you can set up those shots quickly. It was like a 2-minute discussion. We were fighting the sun. We were losing sun anyway. So we had to get the shots in. I just threw that up. It's like, hey, let's try a different flavor of the same thing. And it turned out really good. I also did some tracking shots alongside the truck that would be similar to the dolly tracks on the side. And again, you can fly that at 2, 3, 4 feet off the ground. Another one I did recently was the opening credit roll for a film where the film takes place in the woods, and they needed about 2 minutes flying through a wooded area. That's a little tricky. That's where that practice and stick skills comes in handy. And they wanted it to be in reverse. So you're flying backwards around trees, under a fallen tree and branches, and all this crazy stuff. So, the director was like, okay, I know, whatever, it's going to be hard if you can just get it. And it was like, yeah, but I'm not going to fly it backwards. He's like, well, it's got to be backwards. I'm not flying backwards. So I flew it forwards, and of course reversed it in post.
Right.
So, but I guess he was so consumed with drone, you can do anything. It's like, yeah, well, you can, but it's going to be nutty hard to do. But that was cool to get about 2 minutes, 12 seconds, I think, of footage that they used for that, and it worked out really well for the credit roll. And again, you couldn't lay a track down and get all that. And at times I was maybe 2 feet off the ground to maybe 8 feet when I went over this one part of a tree. But it was a really good reveal coming backwards, and you saw the trees and stuff moving in from the sides of the frame and the bottom. And it just kind of gave that feeling like you were on this ride that you had no control over. You were just, as a viewer, along for the ride. So
I hate to say, like, the crane guys, like, you know, did the drones put them out of business? Because
I don't know, they'll come after me.
They're amazing shots. I just don't think you could get with a crane. You know,
there is a drone that just came out that, in fact, I have one. I just haven't had it out yet. They're just starting to ship, and this thing has some really crazy AI baked into it. And the drone itself, of course, it has the one camera for videography, but it has 6 other cameras, 3 on top, 3 on the bottom, that are all 4K high def cameras. And their sole purpose is to constantly map. It's like 500 times a second or whatever. Take a map of everything around it and build a 360-degree model, so it won't crash into anything. You can fly. Now, little things like a power line or thin tree branches, yeah, it's going to have trouble with that. But like any stationary object, like a wall or a tree or whatever, it's going to avoid that. So it's going to make it a lot easier, I think, for especially a filmmaker to fly in tighter areas, like even indoors or whatever. You'll be able to get around things without worrying about bumping in or hitting something. It's going to kind of guide itself a lot better that way, to let you focus a little bit more on the photography, because the photography is kind of different up in the air. And
wow.
that's
it's kind of like bumper cars, but in the air with no cars.
Yeah. And you want to keep the bumping to a minimum. Your drones typically are controlled by a controller like this. Usually this, and we're talking this class now, again, the big giant drones are going to have bigger controllers and all that. But your controller is going to be handheld, your sticks for guidance and all. But you're going to use a cell phone, or a lot of people like to use an iPad or a tablet. iPad Mini is kind of a perfect size. I bounce off one of those now and then, or I use a couple cell phones. I have an LG that I don't even use for the phone. I just use it for the screen itself. So they're pretty versatile, and not getting into the Apple versus Android thing and all that. They both work really well. All the big drone manufacturers, DJI, Autel, they write their app to work with both platforms. And some people prefer, the button's on the left on iOS and it's on the right on Android. It's all there. I mean, you can work with it. And so the software in the app gives you your tuning controls as far as setting up your camera, your frame rate, your exposure, things like that. Wow. So and again, you can really fine tune these things. Again, that's a big part of the Drone Cav. I'm going to be just hammering that quite a bit. How to set your camera up, how to think. I heard the term once, fly like a filmmaker, and that just boom, that was like a eureka statement, because you're in the air, you've got different dynamics. You're going to be fighting sunlight, you're fighting the sky in some way, trying to get your exposure right, and trying to keep that from shifting if you turn or whatever, and you're going to be turning into the sun, away from the sun, and all that. So there's all these little tricks to keep your exposure, keep your colors right, and get it set up well to go into post.
How do they do when if it's raining? Are they okay in the rain?
They don't like rain.
They don't like
rain. Now they do make for some models, they make raincoats for them. Believe them or not, it's like a silicone cover that goes on them. Problems there are you're adding weight, which is going to cut your flight time and your handling down. Okay. And still the motors are basically open. Some have the way they're built have sort of a shell over them, but there's still that chance of getting water in there. I wouldn't fly in the rain, but I know people that do. And it's been rainy here the past couple of days in Florida, and I know people that are out flying, and it's like, okay, you're crazy, but go ahead. It's possible, but not recommended.
So our niece, her guy, he has a drone he got last Christmas. So he's probably been flying about a year, and he hooks his phone up to the module like you have, and he goes down to the pond down the street and he videos and does that kind of stuff. Is he since he's doing it, like you said, for personal reasons, he's okay with no licensing or anything like that because he's not doing it for any other reason other than his pleasure?
Right. As long as he's just going, like, after work, it's like, hey, I just want to go clear my mind. Just something just to go have fun with. That's perfectly cool. Now, you still should register with the FAA. And the website is, it's like FAADroneZone.com, or it's Drone Zone FAA. I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But even a recreational operator needs to register themselves. Here's a little difference there. As a recreational operator, you register yourself. It's $5 whopping. It's a fortune. And you can have 100 drones, and you can keep them all registered under your name as the umbrella. A professional operator with Part 107, every time I get a new drone, I have to log on, register it individually. It's kind of like registering your car. You get a number for it and an ID number, and that number has to go on the drone, kind of like a license plate. And so that drone is individually registered as a commercial vehicle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have to pay per license, or is it still all under your one license?
No, your drone registration is separate from your Part 107. So, and it's still just $5 a drone. So it's not that bad.
So I have several.
Yeah. So I go through so many drones. It's ridiculous. So I've always got something coming through, and I'll fly it for a little bit and move it on. But my Evo, the orange drone, I've had a couple of those, and they're not going anywhere. They just really do a nice job.
Right.
And they have a lot of flight modes, and video you can shoot in log, which gives you a lot of leeway in post, and the shoots raw still. So you really got to kind of look at that camera when you're buying a drone too. At
the quality of it.
Yep.
Terry's going to help so many people.
Yes, he is.
I'm going to talk people to death.
No,
so,
they need that.
So we are new to Romero Pictures Indie Brigade, as well as you, and we will have some under the big umbrella that we are going to be in the rain. We're going to all have some stations under, and you're going to be posting videos, how-tos,
yes,
informations,
lots of how-tos, tips, camera setup, a lot of photography stuff and videography, composing your shot, executing the flight while shooting, being a photographer and a drone pilot at the same time. And so it's, you gotta, you're responsible when you're in the air. So you've got to make sure the flight's going well, and the photography is going well too. Some drones, even you can get 2 controllers for. If you have another person, one person can do the flying, the other person does the photography. So you can link 2 controllers to. The one I fly, the Evo, I don't have this yet. I think I'm going to buy it. It just recently came out. They have a device that you can connect to a big screen TV, so the director or anybody else, whoever is applicable, can watch a live feed from the drone right there instead of stand over your shoulder trying to look at this little tiny.
Right.
They can be over there with a 42-inch or 56-inch big screen watching the same feed you're seeing, and so you can make adjustments while in flight rather than land and then refigure things out. So that's a pretty cool thing too. So a lot of cool technology I'm going to be talking about.
Oh, well, we look forward to it. We look forward to watching your shows and watching what you have to say. And I mean, I don't think we're going to go out and buy a drone. We've got.
I don't think I trust myself.
I think he wants to buy a couple movies instead, but
yeah,
we'll leave that to the drone guy.
Well,
but
cool.
So we're going to wrap things up here, and we thank you for being here, and we're excited about what's coming up. And we can all be found under the Romero Pictures Indie Brigade.
Indie Brigade on YouTube.
On YouTube and on Facebook.
January 3rd.
On January 3rd, we will have a show where George Romero and Joe Rigsley are going to give what does our 2020 look like? So we got some really cool stuff coming out that we don't even know everything yet. So it's going to be a reveal for us. It's probably for you, and we're all excited about it.
Well, sounds great. I'm super stoked about it, and really looking forward to helping filmmakers out there. And one thing I want to throw out there too, part of the Drone Cav, I'm going to be accessible. So if you have questions, I just don't want this to be a one-way street, talking head, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Here, I'm going to be accessible. So if anybody is going to have questions, whether they want to think about 107 or what drone should I get, or, hey, this is too crazy, I'm just going to hire somebody. How do I do that? So whatever they need, I'll be there for answers. If I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer. Awesome. So I just really want to open this up as a really good resource for the filmmakers out there, because I know nobody. I didn't hit the lottery this week, but we all want to have fun and
right.
do good production. So I just want to open that up too.
That's awesome.
Great getting to visit with you, Terry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's awesome meeting you all.
Look forward to getting to know you better.
That's right.
It's going to be a great year for the Indie Brigade, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Boom.
All right, so we are going to say we'll see you till Friday night, and George has his own farewell. And
I don't dare say it.
We don't dare say it. We are going to, that's our bye.
Well, mine will just be a
there you go.
later.
All right.